would you check your mics and make sure they're blinking in the green? And seeing Mr. Vanderklok has not shown up yet, I'll start with offering prayer for us. Our gracious God and Heavenly Father, how thankful we are that we can live in this community, in this state, and in this country. You have blessed us magnificently. We thank you for it. We pray for your guidance this evening. May our decisions and comments and so on come from the heart. And all these things we ask in your name. Amen. You join me for the pledge, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the record show that all are present except for the clerk, Mr. Vanderklok. And the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda as it's been presented to you.
So moved.
Support.
Any comments or questions concerning the agenda? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It is carried. Next, you have the communications, letters, and reports. These are to be received for information and filed. Does the board have any questions about communications or letters? Seeing none, we'll move on to the public hearing and consideration of the budget. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Mr. Superintendent, you have any comments concerning the budget?
No, we have to give the public an opportunity to ask any questions.
So if the public has any, this is a hearing that's open to the public, to everyone. If you have any comments, please come to the podium and state your name and address and address the board. This is not the public comment period. This is to pertain only to the budget. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. And now a motion would be in order to approve the budget as presented.
So move to approve. Support.
Moved and supported. Seeing the clerk isn't here, it's a roll call vote. Mr. Wieringa?
Yes.
Mr. Valerius?
Yes.
Mrs. Skolma?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Mr. Schwam?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. It is carried. Now is the portion for public comments. Again, this can be on any topic. Please step to the mic if you have 3 minutes. If you wish to address the board, state your name and address and come forward. Hi, John.
Hello. I'm John Cade, 7869 Parkside Court. Tonight, when you discuss item number 10, the policy and rules of the board meetings, there's two things I'd like you also to incorporate or discuss. One is at the beginning and end of each board meeting to have a public comment section. I saw, well, it's on the agenda for tonight, on the actual attachment or the rules, it only showed one at the end. And I really feel there should be one at the beginning and one at the end. Also, I would like to see added at least once a month a formal town hall type meeting as a formal part of the board meeting or one of the board meetings. And I understand the time could be limited to 30 minutes or 45 minutes, but to at least have that once a month, I think that would provide good interaction between the public and the board and the community. My other comment is regarding possible location of the Veterans Memorial. I understand, or I know that Carol has been calling people that bought the bricks, and that a lot of them apparently are saying they like the 200 Baldwin location. And I was wondering if you could, at some point, where is 200 Baldwin the whole 5 acres or whatever it is, or are you referring to having the memorial at what we call the point?
The point.
And then would the other 4 acres or whatever still be for sale?
Presently.
Okay. Now, that was my comment, is that I assumed it was at the point, but I didn't know that. And, by selling the other land would help, obviously, pay back for some of the land that's been bought, and also if you can get a corporation in there to get some more tax base. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anyone else wish to address the board? If not, we'll close that portion of the meeting, public comments, and move to the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Is there any board member that wishes to pull anything off the consent agenda? If not, all in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Is carried. Next is Township Board Policy 2015-03. I'll entertain a motion to adopt that policy as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Questions or comments?
Guess maybe to Mr. Cade's question about the agenda and the structure of it. Looking at it here, I know that we have handled committee meetings differently than the way we have meetings of the full board from a public comment perspective. And typically in the committee meetings, we've had a structured period at the end of the meeting for public comments in the committees, which I thought worked effectively, and typically it's a more casual format, a lot more interactive format, which I thought was good. I guess the comment tonight, I didn't know if that was thoughtful consideration to not have that at the beginning of the meetings, or if that was something that was an oversight that we would be okay putting it back in. Personally, I don't have any problem saying if we want to allocate a limited period of time at the beginning of a meeting to receive public comments related to what we're going to be considering that night. I'm certainly supportive of that. I do think it's appropriate to limit that period, whether it's 30 minutes or some other amount of time. But
Okay, anyone else?
Are you referring, Chad, to the special committee meetings, or are you referring to the
no, I'm
our
referring
board
to
meetings?
the board meetings, this meeting.
Yeah, I kind of figured it was an oversight myself when I read that. I think it works well, especially if they see the agenda. That gives them a chance to comment on items we're going to discuss before we do, and then, of course, afterward. So I guess I didn't think that was intentional, but if it was, I support the manner in which we've handled it previously. The 3 minutes at the beginning, 3 minutes at the end per person. The other thought I had is, I know last meeting we talked about, I think I'd said, well, what about a town hall format for a half an hour after the second meeting each month? I think someone else, maybe Chad or otherwise, said, well, what about quarterly? And someone else I think said every other month or something to that effect. I could see, kind of like we just experimented for the last 6 months with the format we just now abandoned. I think it might be a good idea to put something in place for a 6-month period of time and say, let's see how this works. And perhaps what it would be is maybe being every other month if it's not every month. I'm amenable to experimenting-wise to not necessarily needing every month, but let's see every other month for up to 30 minutes. After the second meeting of the month or whatever, whenever we don't have a committee meeting following, and see how it works. And I would assume if some issue of really great consequence arose, we'd either have the flexibility if we needed to extend, although that wouldn't be the rule or the typical, or to call a town hall at a different time. So it's not as though it's saying that because we do this, we won't have that sort of forum if the need arose. But I think it's worth experimenting with. Just it's my thought. I'd like to hear from the rest of you.
So are you saying like to have it afterwards, after the board meeting?
Yeah. Like, have half hour or something like that. And again, if people weren't comfortable with every month, if they want to experiment with every other and see, I mean, it's, over the next 6 months, that'd be 3 times. We say, hey, how did that work, you know?
Could it be something that took the place of the second comment period, though, rather than the
Oh.
second comment
Oh.
period plus?
Yeah, I see what you
Because
mean.
it's-
I see
yeah.
what you mean. Yeah, I think that's a good point, yeah. I don't think you'd want it to take the place of the first comment period, but the second perhaps, yeah. Just a thought.
Any other
You're
thoughts?
always for public input. I wonder what your...
I am, and
Yeah.
I tell you, Jim, my concern is we've had some people that have behaved badly, and they've interrupted our business and made it challenging. I don't think the board has ever, in the past, had to have people removed, and we've been having that. That bothers me. I would be for what both you and Chad are proposing, but there has to be controls. And if people are not conducting themselves in a professional way, and we hear language that is not appropriate, people turn around and are preaching to the camera and to the group, they're running for office. That's not what this is designed to do. But if they're truly sharing, yes, I'd be for that. But there has been a lack of decorum that I think needs to be addressed. And I think if we keep that in mind, I could support it.
Well, and I think this policy states that the last public comment period would be after the board discussion. And I like that because I think, you
No,
know...
I don't think it does it?
Yeah, I thought it did.
Yeah, it's very end, that's what it is.
It would be after the board discussion.
Oh, okay.
Because otherwise, I feel
Yes.
like if we have the public comment period first at the end of the meeting, before our board discussion, I think by the time we get done with 2 public comment periods, we're really not, you know, wanting to discuss too much anymore. So it'd be, you know, I feel that we would do a better job discussing our issues before and then have the second public comment period after that, as this policy states. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, this is one deviation, there's a couple deviations. This is probably the most significant from the original policy. The original policy has the first one limited to 30 minutes unless the board would extend it more. And the second public comment period is in a sense unlimited. The law says you must have one. You must have one, the law says, at every public board meeting. And I believe generally if it ever went to court is what's reasonable. The general thinking, I think, of the MTA is the one public comment that you have, if you have only one, is relatively unlimited. You can talk as long as you want. Now, I'm sure if it was going on for 4 or 5 minutes and you adjourned and you went to court, the court would say, I think it's reasonable, 4 or 5 hours. But if they went only a half hour, then they might say, no, I don't think that's reasonable. So that is the big significant change, other than a little procedural. I hear some interest in it, and if they want, the only way to get that other back end is for someone to amend the policy and add it. Otherwise, the policy will stand as printed.
So I think, based on the discussion regarding the town hall specifically, I think that might require some more thoughtful consideration. I'd be a little concerned about what language we might put in ad hoc about town hall meetings. I agree with having them. I would hesitate to get too prescriptive in saying, well, a town hall may only be 30 minutes or 60 minutes in this format, because I think what's worked well with town halls in the past is that it's been a bit fluid. So if we felt like it needed to be 60 minutes or 90 minutes, or we felt the opportunity that, you know, if one was going to be half presentation and half discussion, but the other was just going to be Q&A, I think we've preserved flexibility for ourselves in how we go about considering the town hall meetings. And so I would be supportive of us scheduling them. I don't know if that means we have to put it into a policy as opposed to just saying, you know what, when the calendar comes out and we want to have them, then we're going to ask Dan or direct Dan to schedule one for us once a quarter or once a month. If we want to do it after every other board meeting, maybe we need to take more time with this policy to consider it and whatever that language might be. I think for the purposes of the policy that's in front of us tonight, I'm happy to make a motion to add a first public comment period, but I guess probably the question I had before I would make that motion is if we feel like we want to write town hall language in and just take more time with the policy and bring the policy back to a future meeting.
If it were part of the policy, even if it weren't, I feel seeing if this is adopted, we will be back into a committee structure that the consideration of the parameters, the rules, the length, et cetera, that be hashed out at the appropriate committee and then brought to us here as a board. Because that's really a separate thing from, unless you want to make it a part of the policy.
Right.
Does it,
But it really has nothing to do at this time with policy.
does it help anyone's concerns if it were done on a 6-month experimental basis, in which case then you might say, we can always change direction as we've just done with our meeting structure.
Are you prepared to add this to the policy?
You mean,
You're talking
as opposed to having, like Chad's suggesting, having it come back another time, you mean? In other words, am I ready to put the language? Oh,
Yes.
boy. Tell my clients all the time, turn off your phone. Sorry about that. That's my wife.
Because right now, we're really discussing policy, and if you're prepared to add it to the policy, if you want to treat it separately as a board action, then I think the proper way would be to have a committee come back and make a recommendation, and then we act on that. Unless you want it a part of policy. Policy, they're not set in stone, but generally they govern what you do for several months.
I defer to the rest of you on that as far as my perspective, whatever you think best. I think the other point I want to make is with Carol's thought, especially if we didn't have town halls, but if we did, it would become less important. But that last comment period for the public, when it precedes our discussion, and maybe this is part of what you're trying to avoid, but sometimes it informs our discussion time without taking away the things we might have wanted to bring up. So if you were talking about a committee, a conference you're coming to the next week or that you want to report on, you could do that, but you also might, we sometimes hear things in that second comment period that trigger thoughts among us that we wish to discuss as part of that ending. Obviously, you'd say, well, if there's a town hall, we'll have ample time to have that discussion, but if there weren't, it's kind of nice to know what's in the minds of the public prior to our final discussion at a meeting.
I hear what you're saying, but sometimes I feel like by the time that the second public comment period gets done, we really don't have a whole lot of time for our discussion, or I feel like it gets cut short because everybody, the meeting's going along and everybody's kind of sick of it by that time. And, I just don't feel like we've had good discussion time. Myself.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for being late. I kept thinking it was 7:30, I'm sorry. May I just inquire as to what the motion is that's on the floor before us?
So right now, the only motion on the floor is to accept the policy of 2015-.03, which is this. And you came in and there has been discussion about, this says one public comment period. There has been discussion, although no amendment's been offered to it, to add a second one. And now I'm also hearing discussion of possibly altering, putting discussion on the agenda after public comments rather than before. In other words, having public comments and then discussion and general information from the board. Right now, discussion and general information comes before public comments. That's where we are.
Okay, thank you for that information. I'm in favor of this policy. I'm in favor of one public comment. My colleague Jim who made just a moment ago, Jim, you said something about that very often the second public comment time informs our discussion. I don't know I'm trying to think of any examples of when that's happened. Typically, within the last year, the second public comment time has been very negative, directed at particular board members with very little positive input. That's something that, and some of those have been personal attacks, and some of us have been on the receiving end of that. I feel that one public comment time is sufficient, and also with the opportunity, and I think maybe Chad was alluding to that, or maybe it was you, Jim, with the option of determining whether there would be a town hall type comment period. And I'm in favor of that. If there is a particular topic that we are going to discuss at the town hall comment period, if someone says, I'd like to discuss topic A, I'm all in favor of that. However, I looked through this policy and read it, and I'm very happy with it. I think people have expressed the desire to go back to the format that we had, and as Chairman Moore stated earlier, that the policy obviously can change because it has changed in the past, and so I'm in favor of.
I guess what I'm failing to see, though, Rich, is if they're going to get a public comment period at the end anyways, and therefore, as you said, they've been quite negative, if they want to rip you or me or anyone else, they're going to do so whether they do so after board discussion or before, so that's not going to eliminate that potential attitude. And what it does, and maybe this is my litigator in me, but I don't get the last word. And I kind of like the last word, you know.
But does this new policy, Mr. Chairman, does it include the opportunity for discussion amongst the board after the public comment period, or does that change it?
No, it's currently changed. It reverses the order.
Okay, I
first discussion and then public comment, and so the dialogue here is.
Then it seems to me, and again, I like this policy, but if that's a hang-up for people, then it seems to me an easy solution to that would be to make an amendment to change those two and reposition them with public comment and then discussion following.
I would support that.
Well, I'm not offering that as an amendment. I'm just saying that could be an amendment if someone wanted to.
There's two areas here of discussion. We can either, if one person feels, I would recommend that you take them individually if you want to amend this policy, because you may be in favor of one and oppose the other, and then you'll have to vote no.
And I wouldn't live or die on either of these points. I'm just curious to hear from all of you, and let's see where they go vote-wise.
And that's where I am. That's
Yeah.
why I didn't.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't offer it as an amendment, because I'm happy with the way it is.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I do tend to agree with, to me, what is the familiar format of the way the agenda is structured tonight. And that is that at the end of the meeting, it goes public comments, then into discussion and general information, which I tend to agree with you. I think that discussion and general information period has allowed us to clear up misstatements or untruths that are spoken during the public comment period, as well as to answer questions and to inform as to those who would pose the question that we would say, well, we've got an answer right now that we can go ahead and provide. I like the structure of having that discussion and general information after the last public comment period. Personally, I also like having, and I'm fine if we want to pick a different time limit for the first public comment period, but I do think having the opportunity at the beginning of the meeting, before we've considered that night's agenda, for somebody to be able to provide us information that might be useful to whatever our consideration is going to be that evening. I understand that when some would like to not even speak to the agenda, but some entirely different topic, that doesn't seem like a valuable use of that time, but I think there have been times where that time has been very valuably used, or somebody's come and said, I'm the applicant requesting this zoning change, and I'm here to answer your questions, and this is why I'm asking it, or whatever it is. I think there have been opportunities that we've received useful information, or at least identified who we'd be able to call on in our consideration of an item. So, do you have a comment before I start making motions?
If I may, yes. This is a tough situation because you want to give people a chance to speak. But generally we have the same 9 people that will make comments at the beginning and the same 9 people that will make comments at the end. And often it's very challenging. And we've been having that in our meetings. This is kind of an exception tonight. This evening we should be dealing with the business of the township. And oftentimes that's not what's happening. I think a turning point for me was about a month ago where we were talking about the Veterans Plaza and I was explaining my point of view, and often there's conversations going on like we have right now. And there'll be conversations going on, it'll be so loud that if you remember when the seniors were here, they finally stood up and said, "Can you please quiet down the people near us? We cannot hear what you're saying." It is almost to the point of being orchestrated, making it extremely difficult, to the point where I was being shouted over. And it is incredibly embarrassing when our sergeant has to remove people and there's a confrontation afterwards. That should not happen. And then to have another one. And we have had the last 9 months have been difficult. It's not freedom of speech, even though we've had individuals in the crowd start chanting that during our meeting. I feel it's challenging us to do our job for the township. And I agree with Chad. I'm not saying we shouldn't eventually consider putting that back in, but you have to have decorum and be able to do our business, and that has not happened. This is like a classroom that is out of control. And what do? Do you just let it continue and say, well, that's what you have to live with and you can't get the business done of the township? Or do you finally say, we have to take some action? Granville has one meeting. To my knowledge, Hudsonville has one public comment. I think what we do is unusual. But if you look back, year after year after year, there would not be any comments at the beginning or at the end. Very unusual. Now, Rich and Dale and Carol are here every day, and they have an open door policy. The 9 people that come to every meeting, only a few times have ever gone to them. Afterwards, we all stand here and we wait, and occasionally we'll have a few people that will come up and address the situation. We're available ahead of time. Many of us in here will meet people ahead of time and meet them at restaurants. And now when you email with our new system, every one of us gets that email and can respond ahead of time. There has never been a more open township board than what we have here right now. I'm not saying the others, they were good people years ago. But we have a power problem here of individuals that I feel are disrupting our meetings. And that was stressed this last week on Facebook. Individuals that are embarrassing the township. So I agree with Chad, except we have individuals that are behaving badly, and because of that, I think we're remiss not to take control of the situation. We are making a mistake, and we should fall into line like the rest. And then if things improve and we have a better decorum, I'm for that. I'm also, I feel the town hall meetings I think can be good, but again, they have to be structured. And if someone raises their voice or puts on a show by walking to the back wall and start talking to it or something like that, or rushing the microphone, and we've had that, this embarrasses our township. So yes, I think 2 times I would be all for that if we did not have an organized group that is disrupting our meetings, and that is what's happening. And the turning point for me was a month ago. You should not have a former official take control of a meeting, or try to. So I would support Rich on this. I believe this is a route we should go. I think we have to. And it's sad that we've gotten to that point, to the point where you just do not have the decorum. Now, I think Dr. Moore has done a wonderful job, and I appreciate his control, But he's been extremely flexible, giving these people a chance for free speech, and they've taken advantage of it. I think it's up to us as a board to react to this. I want to see us go to one meeting, one public speaking.
Do you feel like, John, in doing that, if you don't mind, Dale, I don't want to, if someone else want to comment, I'm wrestling with it. You said that very well, John. And so I sit here and think, is it going to be any less so with one, or it will just be a longer period of time versus breaking it up within two? I'm trying to see where, if someone has come with the purpose to disrupt, won't they do so if given one opportunity or two, or you feel like it's thrown us off at the beginning of meetings?
It's 3 minutes instead of 6. And it's the same 9 people. Almost, you seldom have someone that has not been part of the group.
Let me interject here, because I apologize, because if there's not decorum, that's the chair's fault.
You've done a great job.
And I've been very, very liberal, and probably too much so. But yes, I know it irritates us when the same people come and say the same thing, but that is their fundamental right. When I was on the intermediate board, we had one person, only one person, at every meeting. And she used her privilege of public comment to address it. It was always on the same item. Always, without fail. Nothing new, always one. And I think it's still going on today, I understand, when I talked to him. She is still there. She was an employee who had been let go, and her mantra was, and that's her right. I mean, yes, did people get a little tired of it? Yes. But that's her right to do that. And I think that right supersedes everything. I think you got to be very, very careful about cutting off, and again, the public's opportunity to participate. Again, it's reasonable, but as I say, the lack of decorum is my fault, and I certainly will try to address it a little bit better in the future.
Mr. Chairman, my colleague Chad made some good points, as did John. All of us on this board know that for the past several months, many months, there have been individuals who've addressed the board, but their addressing of the board has been personal, and it's been directed at individuals on the board. That's disturbing, and I agree with what John was alluding to. That doesn't get us anywhere. And then when we had the second public comment period, as I've already referenced, those same individuals got up and said the same thing. Now, I believe that every person has the right to have public comment. We have the Open Meetings Act, which allows for that and says that there must be at least one time for public comment in a public meeting. I believe that this policy addresses that and meets the requirements of the Open Meetings Act for public comment. And I, again, just want to reiterate, I think this is a policy that if we approve and we discover that there are some parts of this policy that could be renegotiated or reconsidered or changed, we certainly can do that. But I feel that we're in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. We're allowing public comment, and individuals have the opportunity to address the board. And if whatever statements they want to make which remains within the decorum of the public meeting, that's legitimate. But that's my take.
I'm wondering if there's,
Sorry. I want to there's 2 board members that haven't had an opportunity to voice anything.
I spoke to it with...
You done?
Yeah.
Ron?
I disagree. I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that they have the right to give public opinion and do it twice. I have no problem with that.
They do not have the right to do it twice. That's something that's given to them by this board. They have the right to once.
But I'm in favor of
Okay.
having the second opportunity.
Other comments? Are we ready to proceed with either nothing or an amendment?
I have a question, and it's getting to, I don't know, that first public comment period, the intent of that, in an ideal scenario, is really to inform current agenda items. I guess I'd be comfortable asking the manager to explore with council if we can impose a limit on the public comment period beyond time, to say, so that as you were setting it up, that the that comment period is simply to speak to items being considered on the agenda that particular evening.
I'm sure you could if you offered the second one, saying they may speak.
Agree, and that's what I'm saying. If we indeed instituted a first public comment period with restrictions to say this is simply to inform, there will be a open period at the end to insult and whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware that I think even on the policy, it says, it alludes to this public comment of being concerning the agenda. Anyone else? Or if someone's ready, I think, to make an amendment.
Ron, do you think that the meetings have been under control as far as the behavior of some of the individuals that we've had here?
There have been issues at times,
Yeah, but that's been my fault.
which the chairman can
Yes,
correct.
yes, it is.
So Chad, what you were referring to, would that be, like, even if someone was coming to speak to about the planning commission item or something like that? If they were addressing the board? Okay.
I would like to propose that we change the rotation, that we approve the bill as presented, except I would change the rotation that we have public comment, and then we have deliberation after that and present our own questions and so forth.
Okay, there's an amendment just to reverse discussion and general information and public comments. To put public comments in accordance with the procedures established by this policy as J, and discussion and general information will be K. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'll support that.
There's moved and supported. Any question on the transposing of those two items? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Opposed.
Okay, let the record show that Mr. Valerius opposed. The rest is, it's carried 6-1. Okay, anything else?
I will move to insert a public comment period not to exceed 30 minutes between items G and H, the public hearings and consent agenda.
Support?
Okay, there's a motion and supported. Questions or comments concerning that? And this would be structured as the original.
Yes, and I would be happy to come back to this one at a future meeting if it's determined we can impose a further clarification or restriction upon this comment to make it restrictive to items considered on that evening's agenda.
Okay,
Agreed.
any other discussion concerning that amendment? Okay, the amendment is to insert a 30-minute public comment as previously, and that is to go on the agenda between G and H, the agenda as presented to us here on the policy. Anything additional? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
No.
No.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Wieringa.
Yes.
Mr. Valerius.
Yes.
Mrs. Skolma.
No.
Dr. Moore.
Yes.
Clerk votes no. Mr. Tuttle.
Yes.
Or Mr. Schwamm.
No.
It's carried 4-3. Okay, now we're back to the policy as amended. Any questions now on the broad policy? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption of the board policy 2015-03 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Wieringa.
Yes.
Mr. Valerius.
Yes.
Mrs. Skolma.
No.
Dr. Moore.
Yes.
Clerk votes no. Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Mr. Schwam?
No.
It carries. Next item is the number of animals for special use permit. Chaspoma, 2861 Monolith, to have a farming operation under appropriate sections. As
Item 11.
Mr.
Should we
Chair,
do number 11,
No.
Mr. Chairman?
I was going to come back to that one. Demolition and restoration of the 99 Chicago Drive property.
I would move the demolition and basic restoration of the 99 Chicago Drive property.
Support.
Moved and supported. That's the old hotel, right?
No,
No.
that's this piece
This is
right
the-
here.
Union Avenue.
Union Avenue.
Oh, okay. This is 99 Chicago.
Union Avenue doesn't exist anymore, so it had to have a new
Oh,
name.
okay. Gotcha.
Union Avenue's gone.
Any questions, comments, discussion?
I know I brought this up before, and I'm not sure, again, if this is the point at which it would have to be addressed, but I keep bringing up the idea of some, moderate amount of improvement to the area where the tattoo parlor presently sits, and that whole grassy knoll, if you will, so that it doesn't look to be just a blank slate with, ferns up against the neighboring commercial property, but rather looks like a more park-like. So you might have a tree here and an evergreen there and so on, so that it just looks more appealing as you drive in. So do we know if this is the time and the place?
To address the plan, the basic restoration, we are talking about grass,
Okay.
and we're talking about sprinkling, and then a few trees that match the current trees that are there, just to continue and to get further sparse as they go. So you'd have the same type of trees that are there, but just a few more, keep going. If you want something different, just let us know.
I guess I'm suggesting something a little bit more involved, although it's hard to picture that, but I'd like to, not that I'm looking for a forest, but I'm also not looking for orphaned, plants or trees either. It'd be nice to, I think we could all kind of conjure up the same image in our mind that's not over the top, but not so sparse that it looks Charlie Brownish. It would be nice to have it be appealing, if that makes sense. And to the degree, I haven't really stared at what we'll see as the new site there, but I trust Mike Smith in terms of, hey, I think you're going to want a barrier of this sort back along the back side of it. That'd be a nice barrier. These would be good barrier trees, but out front so that you don't just see a barrier, I'd recommend maybe a little bit more, plantings or trees or what have you to make it, less obvious. So I don't know if I just described something different than what you did or not, but I trust Mike would understand that.
I'm thinking of just taking the same pattern of trees that we have now and keep it going. If you want more than that or a plan, we can get a plan if that's what you'd like, if that's what the board would want.
I think it'd be good to do what you were suggesting, maybe put those trees in, and then maybe we want more, we can always add more later. I don't know. Just kind of keep that's my thoughts.
Anyone else?
I agree with Jim that this should be well done, first impressions.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I have a family emergency. I have to step out.
Excuse me. Anyone else? Otherwise, the motion before the board is demolition and restoration of the 99 Chicago Drive property. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It's carried. Now the number of animals you have before you. And it's to waive the limit of the number of animals allowed to us. Pleasantly is 20. And I believe it's over 5 acres they may have 20, right? Which this is. Which I don't understand the requirement for the use of special use permit.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that we approve this special use permit, and if someone supports it, I can speak to it if they'd like me to.
Support. We're just doing the animals right here.
Yes, it's just the animals.
Just the animals, right.
Right, and the young couple came to the Planning Commission, and the location of this particular piece of property is adjacent to, very close to the expressway also, but where it's located, there are other properties that have animals, and if you read the material, as I'm sure you all did, you discover what kind of animals it is that they're going to keep there. And Planning Commission was very much approving, and it was unanimous that we granted this to this young couple.
Anything else? What I didn't understand is, because I think the ordinance says if it's over 5 acres, they may have this number of animals, so I didn't even know why it was a question, because it is 5.12 acres, I believe.
Well, we may need some correction on the ordinance or change the ordinance, but the board may waive the requirement if it's more than 5 acres. That's all you're here to do then, is to waive that requirement.
Oh, so even if that's 10,
Right,
you have to waive.
right.
Which is why we think there should be an ordinance change.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I believe this is the second time this has come to us in the recent past where we've waived that requirement.
Okay.
And that wasn't that long ago when we did that previously.
Okay, anything else? If not, a motion is to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, is carried. Next, it is a resolution to move and establish a polling location. We lost one polling location, and so to replace it, we have to open another.
So moved.
Support. And just a little bit of background here. Precinct 1 is located at the Ice Center. And the reason for moving it, and it'll be moved to Wellspring Church, so now we'll have 2 precincts at Wellspring Church, Precinct 1 and Precinct 3. But the reason for moving it is because we have 4 elections coming up in 2016, and because of the activity that's going on there, and because of the amount of equipment that we'll put in there, it just makes it very unwieldy. And so the Wellspring Church was very accommodating, and they did say, yes, we have place for you. And so this is the resolution that's before you, and that's the reason why we're doing it.
Any other comments or questions concerning the resolution? The motion is to approve the resolution to move and establish polling location. Mr. Chairman, would you call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Schwamm?
Yes.
And the clerk votes yes. Dr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Skolma?
Yes.
Mr. Valerius?
Yes.
Mr. Wieringa?
Yes.
That is passed.
Okay, thank you. Now we come to the second public comment of the board. Please feel free to come in 3 minutes.
I have sat very patiently while listening to the discussion about the second public comment period. I don't like to come up here and generally talk off the cuff. I like to be prepared. I'm not prepared. However, Mr. Schwalm, your discussion about people grandstanding and running for office, I don't know what planet you're on, but I can tell you the people that I'm associated with, not one of us is running for office. You will look like a fool
Be careful
next
now,
year.
be careful.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mr. Vanderklark, it is not our responsibility to come in here and give you positive comments. We elected you to office to do what's best for the constituents and to
You can
listen
address
to the
the whole
constituents.
board about that.
Pardon me?
I want to limit this personal.
I understand that, but they
personal
made this
attack.
personal in their own comments,
And then you
and
could
it's
say,
now our
someone
time.
said on the board.
So, okay, someone said on the board that they don't have to listen to negative comments. Well, someone on the board, maybe you should not run for office next time. It's not our job to be positive. It's not your job to restrict what we come up here to say. And it's not your job to make personal attacks on your constituents, which a couple of you have. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm still John Cade, 7869
Haven't
Parkside
changed,
Court.
huh?
And I would like to thank Dr. Moore and the other people that voted to have a first public comment section. Thank you, Dr. Moore. We're not all negative. I'm thanking you. Maybe at the discussion section, if either Dan Carlton or some board member could give us an update, give the public an update of what is going on with the Kmart building and the negotiations with Mr. Nelson. That would be appreciated. And my final thing is regarding the Veterans Memorial. I personally still feel that Woodcrest Park is a good location by the pond. It is quiet. The veterans that I and other people talk to like that location. Flags can be there and they can be seen from Baldwin. And that park can use some revitalization, and this could be part of the start of revitalizing that park. Something that might go very well there, I've heard there are handicap swings, and maybe at that park is a place to put them where you take a wheelchair and there's a platform, and these are professionally made. I've seen pictures of them. And that the handicap swing could be there for disabled people that cannot use a traditional swing. And as far as I know, there is no handicap swings in this area, not just in Georgetown, but as far as I know, there may be some in some township, but I don't think there are any around here, so I think that could attract people to see the Veterans Park and to come to Georgetown. And I would also, again, I've said this before, as far as a name change, wherever the park is, to call it maybe a Freedom Park or Liberty Park, something that honors the veterans. Thank you.
And hello again this evening. My name is Erin Wiseman-Parkin, still 7468 Glendora. I would just like to say thank you for this evening. Thank you for the chance to speak. I would like to caution the board, though, when you do have citizens coming and taking time out of their family to come and attend these meetings, and it might be the same several over and over and over again, we do make sacrifices, and some of us work very hard to keep it constructive and to keep it formal with decorum and respect. And I really would caution the board to not lump everyone together. Be careful criticizing constituents, because that is a way to turn people off. A lot of the new generation watching this on TV, watching this on YouTube, online. So you might not see people here, but they're watching and they're learning and they're listening. And I think it's really important to send the message that we do want you here. You are welcome here, but as the board has said, decorum and respect is appreciated on both accounts, for us, but also for you as you are sitting on the board doing your job. As a history teacher with social studies and economics and working with kids in the community, I would just caution you to be careful, the message you send, be welcoming, but absolutely uphold that high standard, which Jonathan is proud of. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
Mr. Victory, you can have 3 minutes.
I see that clock is clicking. Good evening, everybody. Roger Victory, State Rep for the 8th District, which Georgetown is, I will say here, my favorite township, but I say that quite frequently at various other townships. But it is dear to my heart because I do live right here in Georgetown Township. Just to give a little update where we're facing at the state level, a number of different issues. One forefront is roads. We're trying to get across a solution to that sustainable funding mechanism. It's been a trying period. We have been deflected a little bit because we had two of our colleagues had some situations, Representative Corser and Cindy Gamrat, that They were removed from office. Cindy Gamrot was my seatmate. I was assigned to be her mentor, and so I had a chance to get to know Cindy a little bit, and there was like two different type of personalities there, but I do believe the leadership took the appropriate actions on that, and she was expelled, and at this point in time, she heard in the media they are both running for those seats again, but hopefully the voters will participate and let their voices be heard, and hopefully we will have two other people reassigned to those seats, because we have important work to do on behalf of the state of Michigan, and right now that 80th district has no representation currently in Lansing, and that's a shame. 100,000 people without no voice while we're taking on these important issues. So as I mentioned, roads is forward on the agenda there, making sure we have a sustainable funding mechanism for that. But I want to praise Georgetown Township, because I noticed you had a very aggressive road paving program. I was speaking to the County Road Commission, Ottawa County Road Commission, and they said Georgetown does do it right. You know, you have funding for that there, and you do not allow those roads get to that stage of beyond repair. And it's important for those neighborhoods when you do those paving operations, because some of these neighborhoods in Georgetown, you know, some of the homes were built in the 50s and the 60s, and when you pave that road, some of those other homeowners are redoing their driveways, and it helps raise those property values. And when you raise those property values, you got a stronger tax base, which then you have strong schools. So it's when you keep up on infrastructure like you do right here in Georgetown, it's important, and I think it's something important that we need to do on behalf of the state too. So keep up the good work, and keep on that aggressive road repair program that you're doing, because it does show benefits later on. Speaking of another tough situation we're dealing with, I'm on a task force dealing with DPS, Detroit Public Schools. Critical issue, Detroit Public Schools. It's a little tougher situation than the city of Detroit, because of bankrupt-able debt, it's not trade debt. Basically, the debt that's owed by Detroit Public Schools, the state has to stand behind it, because our Constitution says we have to educate the children of the state, and those debts has to be backed by the state. What is that dollar amount? A little bit over $500 million. What does that translate into? $50 per student throughout the state. So that's the cost, $50 per student throughout the state of Michigan. So there's no quick fix to this. And also what the products being produced in Detroit Public Schools, it's wanted, because they're not meeting the educational standards. So as we dig into this, it's not an easy situation, because you can't just deal at the financial level, you have to do at the performance level, because if we're going to be doing investment in those schools, we have to have some accountability, so there's a lot of work to be done. So that's another issue that's been facing out there is the unemployment insurance agency. So actually FOT 17 has been doing some segments on that, and that's a little bit alarming, because digging into the issue, there was a computerized system set up to detect fraud. I appreciate the government digging into these issues, because we do not want to have fraud. We have to be, but however, when you accuse people of fraud by use of a computer, I have a problem with that. And how active was this computer? 8,000 letters of fraud, of accusing good people in the state of Michigan of it. And some of the only issues they had is when they gained employment, they did not go online and check the website and notify them that they were gainfully employed. Because of that error, and the computer sent them a fraud letter. And some of them are being accused of payment in tens of thousands of dollars. And it's a very problematic situation, getting resolution on those situations. Just to give some how overreach it was, they have been able to track it down. They have re-examined 500 of those cases. So 8,000 letters went out. 500 they have had a human element reviewing those files. Of those 500 that were reviewed, 23 only had legitimate fraud. So that's less than 5%. In the meantime, you have 8,000 people been accused of fraud, have to deal with this situation. Don't know how to handle it. I mean, they're gainfully employed going forward, and I think that's something that we have to look at, because that's not customer service on behalf of the state of Michigan. So just to give a little update on some things we're dealing in a whole host of other areas, and so if you had any questions, I'm here to help answer any questions you may have.
Good, thank you, Roger. You stick around afterwards, we're almost over the meat with a few meat.
Alan Dodds, 7783 Lilac Drive.
I do believe in freedom of speech and being able to come up and talk up here. And normally I'm not a first voiceful person, but I do believe into it very strongly. Yes, you guys will get attacked from time to time. Yes, you got people with all different lengths of fuses. That's why you have a law officer here. I don't think it humiliates the board in any way, shape, or form when someone comes up here and has a short fuse. I sat through a whole year's worth of Granville's council meetings with them all. If you want to see some more short fuses, you should have sat through that. It was hours and hours of meetings. There was one meeting that didn't get done until 11:30 at night. I mean, we went hours on these meetings, recording them, putting TVs in the basement to accommodate all the people. It's just not your meetings. When there's a topic that people are passionate about, they're going to come up and talk. And yes, there's all different short lengths of fuses. So that's just what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Anyone else? If not, we'll close that portion of the meeting and go to discussion and general information of the board. Any board member want to discuss anything or offer us any general information?
I'd like to mention this Friday we have a kayak adventure between Georgetown Township and Granville. And I hope all of you will be able to participate in some way. If you're unable to kayak but would like to be at Grand River Park, there'll be a picnic there. John Schultz from Ottawa County, who's heavily involved in the environment and an excellent speaker, will be a guest speaker down there. We also are involving the schools, and Tom Tenbrink is going to be there with some students, and our new superintendent at Granville Public Schools, Roger Barrett, is going to be there. They're also bringing some administrators with them and students. So this is a chance for the sister communities that are on the bend, and the old book, The Bend in the River. We're going to wear t-shirts. We love the Bend in the River. And we're hoping it brings both communities together. Carol and Dr. Moore and myself met with Mayor Moss this summer, and this just seemed like a smart thing for us to do, at least to get it started and see how it develops. And if it seems like there's a lot of support for this in the future, we might want to invite the general public. And I think we have this gem here that we just don't acknowledge. Many people still laugh at the Grand River, and yet it's beautiful. And it's a terrific resource for us, and they're trying to develop a green belt the entire length. And so I think if we can, by participating in a kayak adventure like this, we think that'll be team building also. If we can put a positive focus on that area, it would be good for our community. I know as we purchased some of the houses down on Baldwin, part of that was to potentially have a trail that will connect with the Grand River, and those areas could be used as a staging point for parking. We're already looking in those directions, but I think we need to get the public behind us on this. And so if we have an event like this, WCET is offered to come and do some videotaping and some interviewing, and maybe we can have the community focus more on joining our communities together. Firemen, policemen are going to participate, and I think anytime you have communication is positive for all of us. Another thing I'd like to mention, if I may, I talked to Dan a few months ago about if we could develop a letter to prospective businesses. Trader Joe just opened up in Kentwood this last week. We have, our area is with 50,000 people, unknown to many. We have only 2 of our licenses being used for alcohol for full-service restaurants. We have 30 available. People are stunned when they hear that. And I'd like to see us develop a formal letter, send it to certainly local restaurants, and I know Dan has already done some of this, but then also send it to some chains. Now we have some problem because so many of these are at the mall that they can't be within a certain distance. But I feel that we could probably reach 40 to 50 companies and sell our township to them. So what I'm looking for is a little support or a little direction for Dan, that he could develop a letter and that we would send this out to prospective companies. And there's a brochure that's developed by the Chamber of Commerce. It is excellent, and it highlights. So if we had a letter of introduction and some statistics on Granville, and we were to put the chamber's booklet in there, I think it would be powerful. It would at least make a statement that, yes, we are open for business and we are looking for businesses. But Dan needs some direction on that and support from the rest of the board. I'd like to seek your support and have him go in this direction. Would any of you speak to that?
Yeah, we'll refer that to the appropriate committee to take up. John's committee mainly.
The Services Committee would be happy to do that.
And John, I'm supportive. I know that it's a step short of what you and I had pushed for last year, which was a part-time marketing person, which I know didn't receive majority support, but this might be a smaller step in that direction to begin. If we're not going to hire somebody to help with that, then we probably need to do more of that ourselves.
I talked with Mayor Moss this week, and they started out their individual, who's also going to be going kayaking with us, part-time. The wages were in line with what we were talking about before. And he just said to me, frankly, she lives for this. We probably get 60 hours of work out of her for a part-time position. She is required to generate $20,000 from local businesses to help with the community. She is able to raise 30. She more than pays for her own wages. And they have some just wonderful things that they do on a daily basis. In fact, I meant to put these by your chairs, but they have a Harvest Fest this week. These are going out to about 1,500 school children and will be taken home with them. They do this all the time, and they're able to pay for it and get people into their downtown area. I'd like to see us at least looking in this direction. So I have a sucker for you to kind of bribe you towards the end.
Is Mavis still looking for a job?
Part of your, in your services committee, when you address this, also be very interesting to get information about how many businesses she's connected with bringing into the city of Granville, that she's had some responsibility in.
Yep.
I just want to say thank you to John for all the work that you're putting together for this kayak event. I think it will be a huge benefit for both communities. I'm looking forward to participating in myself and not tipping over in the kayak. And I'm just wondering if Dan could possibly answer John's question about what's happening with the Kmart building.
Sure. He's a difficult person to deal with. We had an agreement, we reached an agreement, we thought it was all set, and then he wants 6 more changes, so we're waiting to see those 6 more changes. And, you know, I don't know if we'll reach it, but we'll see. I mean, he tells us he will, but then he's told us that before, so, you know, it's hard to get concrete till you actually see the agreement signed.
So it's not finalized yet.
It's not finalized yet. You know, he told us it was good, the attorneys all signed off on it, and now he doesn't like 3 things, so it's like, okay.
Well, that'll make the
change that.
attorneys happy.
That's the problem, so. But meanwhile, no one else has made any offers on the property, so we're still looking at his.
Mr. Waringa?
What time is the Friday event?
10 o'clock.
Okay.
And noon will be the picnic.
Okay.
Nothing else?
Nothing.
I've just been, wanted to give you an updated list. I've been continuing the calls and the emails for the Veterans Plaza, and this is an updated list. I still have a ways to go, but I'm getting there. I'm very close to being done. Most of the people have been either emailed or called, but I haven't heard back from everybody, and I don't imagine that I will hear from everybody, but this is an updated list and just kind of gives you an idea of the people's preferences. And also, I'm just hoping that we can maybe discuss this more at our next workshop, because the one comment I do keep hearing when I talk to people is they're very appreciative of my call, and also they are just hoping that we do this soon. They're wondering, it's been 2 years, and many, many people have said, we just want to see it get done. So if we could just discuss it maybe at our next workshop, and hopefully by that time I will have the rest of them done in an updated list. And I do have an extra, I don't have a lot, but I have a couple extra copies if anybody wants one. I think, John, you asked me for an updated one, so.
Appreciate that, because I wonder whether I'm going to outlive this or outlive the dog. Mr. Vanderklark.
Nothing.
John has spoken, I have nothing. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned.